Now, Dan, through Detroit Venture Partners and Quicken Loans, you have actually, in the last several years, moved 6,000 of your staff into the core of downtown Detroit. You have taken ownership of some very marquee properties in the city that you've been redeveloping. By bringing employment back into the city, what kind of a demonstration effect have you seen? Who has followed your lead in contributing to Detroit 2.0?
Well, actually, before we get going, what I'd like to do is invite Sean Penn to Detroit at night, because he was talking about Detroit at night. And actually, it's not what you think. Like tonight, for instance, the Tigers are playing the Yankees. Game 3, Jason Verlander. Come on to Detroit. A lot going on there. Just
same thing.
So I just want to make sure. I mean, it was like a softball, so I had it that. It's interesting because, Detroit had to bottom out. It had to hit bottom, and really bottom happened with the bankruptcy of the automobile companies. And that bottom has sort of given us a new beginning, gave us an opportunity. We grew our company in the suburbs for over 20 years. And a couple years ago, we had to make a decision, what we wanted to do. Do we want to build in some farmland out there or lease some more suburban office space? And I was born in Detroit, my father was born in Detroit, my grandfather was born in Detroit, and we just felt we were in a position to really positively impact the outcome. Our people wanted to do it. And so over the last 2 years, we moved 6,500 people downtown. They're loving it. Definitely other companies have come down there. We just put Twitter in one of our buildings. There's lots of discussions going on with a lot of named technology companies as we try to build the corridor out, a technology corridor out. And Blue Cross Blue Shield just moved 3,000 people downtown. Renaissance Center, where GM's world headquarters is at, you may notice that if you ever see a Skyline picture of Detroit, it's the big buildings on the river. They're full, 100% full, Renaissance Center. So, things are starting to happen there. They had a skyscraper sale that we participated in. It was crazy. We were paying per square foot less than what it goes for annually in New York City on a per square foot basis for the building itself. So, just huge amounts of office space that we've filled up. And, it's very exciting down there right now. And the main thing is to keep the great people coming out of our universities, University of Michigan, Michigan State, all these talented people and entrepreneurs in the city. And the way you do that is by having a thriving, hustling and bustling urban core, because I think it's pretty much known that, this generation overwhelmingly wants to be in an urban core. So, people like Larry Page, for instance, who's from Michigan, and tons of other technology people, that we don't want to lose the next ones. We want to keep them in the city. And I think by having a thriving downtown urban core, that's the way you do it.
Tell us about that program that you've launched, the Internship Program, that is meant to capture that next generation and kind of bring about this brain gain instead of the brain drain.
Of all the things we've been engaged with in the city of Detroit, the buildings and the renovations, which you'll see some of the pictures here behind me, but we decided to go all out on the internships. The summer of 2011, we had just a test pilot of it. And then in 2012, without even any advertising whatsoever, we received 8,700 applications for internships in the city from everywhere. We can only handle 600 of them. So we had 600 interns this summer from 157 colleges and universities all around the United States. And they loved it. I mean, they just loved the fact that they could impact the outcome. Our sell to them, believe it or not, it's a sell. We always say to people, look, you can go to Boston, New York, Chicago, wherever, and I'm sure you can do well. But where can you also get a good job now and also positively impact a great American city? And that sells to this generation. So, we wish we could have hired more of them. Hopefully next summer we will.
With all the college graduates actually who are living at home, this is an opportunity at least to get out of the house and do something at the same time. You mentioned the tech corridor that you're trying to build in the city. I'd love to hear more about that, especially because in the context of Detroit, which a half century ago was a major innovation center in the United States.
Yeah, the closest comparison probably is Silicon Valley today. Detroit was probably the Silicon Valley of its day, especially from the teens, through the 50s. And it's a shame what happened. I think, there's a lot of things that happened, but we didn't diversify our economy from the manufacturing economy, and we relied too long on it. We never really captured the sexiness of the automobile business either. You can imagine some of the questions we ask today is like, why did Detroit lose auto racing to the South? I mean, how did that happen? So, why aren't there incredible museums in Detroit? There are a few actually that are outside the city, but Greenfield Village, but why weren't all these great exciting things that are connected to automobiles part of the city too. So now people are looking at that as well. And I think the future is great, and I think that this technology corridor we're trying to build here is a 3-block corridor. It's got 2 or 3 million square feet of office space. Some of you see in that picture right there, that's the Madison building, which is sold out, which is an old theater building. There's an auditorium in there, and we have 34 startup businesses in there. One of them is Detroit Venture Partners, which is a venture capital business that Magic Johnson and myself, Josh Linkner, who you see in that picture there, created to fund businesses in the city, and people are coming and businesses are coming.
What other cities are you learning from? As you look around the country, you see that places like Philadelphia, New York, Washington, a lot of people talk about Las Vegas as places where there's been a lot of revitalization going on. Are you learning from some of these examples? Is there something of a sort of network, brain trust of people that you have helping you?
Wherever we go, even here in Scottsdale, Arizona, we drove by a couple of folks I'm traveling with. We drove by this garage that we thought was really cool. I don't even know what street it was on. And we're always trying to pick up things in cities, and certainly what Mayor Bloomberg's done in Detroit in a short period of time that you showed earlier. And Tony Hsieh at Zappos in Las Vegas has done a lot of interesting things. And there's definitely in Chicago, when we go visit there, we see a lot of great stuff happening. So we try to pick up bits and pieces. None of them quite had almost the clean white sheet of paper or whiteboard that we had an opportunity to take advantage of in downtown Detroit. And so that was a way to sort of paint the picture and start from scratch, but at the same time trying to get best practices from every city and place we visit.
So no one today has used the word mayor, interestingly enough. We're talking about cities, but in fact, we brought you here because you are the person who represents this effort, and yet you're a private citizen. And in fact, you're part of a consortium in a way, a committee of individuals who are basically you've become an authority unto yourselves in strategizing the redevelopment of city. Of course, the mayor's office is involved, but this is something new in the sense that you're not relying on the government, you're not waiting for the government. Can you tell us a bit about this structure that is basically serving as the governing board for Detroit?
Well, Detroit, of course, it still has its mayor, Mayor Bing, who you may recognize that name, Dave Bing, top 50 NBA Hall of Fame basketball player for the Detroit Pistons, and he's a great guy. And if you recall, there was a scandal that occurred with the prior mayor that made the national headlines, but the text-based scandal, if you recall. But he took on a very, very big challenge, and he had to get involved in cleaning up. Financially financially are the things, or the finances are the things that he's really focused on right now. There's a committee that's on a consent decree right now that is helping manage the city out of its financial issues. So it's sort of the best of times, worst of times. We've got all this great stuff going on in the private sector and private enterprise, while the public sector is sort of fighting their last battle, and it will be the last battle to clean up everything and get the city's finances back where they need to be. So, the biggest statistic, if you want to look at a crazy statistic for Detroit, is that Detroit peaked, I'm talking not Metro Detroit, but the city itself. Detroit proper peaked in like 1958 of a shade under 2 million people, 2 million citizens, and today there's 700,000. Now the metro area has still grown, but the city, so you have 144 square miles you're dealing with, for 700,000 people, and that's why, to me, you've got to start at the core, at the heartbeat, and then you spread outwards, and you got to create the jobs in downtown.
What you're doing is actually right out of the playbook of a new book that has just been published by MIT professor Brett Ryan, which he talks about. The title of the book is Design After Decline. And he looks at Philadelphia, Detroit, and a few other cities and what they're doing to to jumpstart infrastructure investment in downtown core areas. And he advocates exactly this: focus on the downtown core, make very big revitalization types of measures with big influx of capital, and also focus on civic projects that sort of build on that momentum. So you're doing exactly that. And one of the signature projects, which we haven't yet seen the picture of yet up here on the screen, but watch out for it, are the plans for the M1 light rail corridor. What is the state of that? How is that going? Because transportation is, of course, the key.
So Detroit is the only city, I think, in Western civilization that has zero mass transit. Now, a lot of people, it's true, a lot of people...
Someone Google that.
Just check, fact check or something. But people blame that. There's a sort of this urban legend that the automobile companies, because that's where you're building the cars in Detroit, and they just sort of stonewalled any kind of mass transportation that was against their fiber and their DNA. But when I did a little research on that, I don't think it's quite true. I think what really stopped it is that the leaders over the decades just couldn't get their act together. So what we did is we had Roger Penske and myself, Roger Penske, who's a big Detroit advocate, and several others, Mike Ilitch, who owns the Tigers, where Sean Penn's going to attend the game tonight, and others, had a private effort and have a private effort going on to put light rail along the main corridor. Actually, it's streetcar, not quite light rail. Curbside for a 3.5 mile stretch, on this corridor of the buildings that you're looking at here, that really connects the Wayne State Museum area, down to the river. And that if we can get that done, and we've raised $120 million privately, each station is being sponsored by various companies, so Penske, Quicken Loans, General Motors, and so on. And that, they're sponsoring very nice stations. And if we can get that going and show the federal government that we can finally do something privately, that then finally, they may fund the overall regional system. So that's it in a nutshell. But, looking at Portland and Minneapolis and Denver and what all these other cities who have put a light rail in it has done for those cities, to me, it's the top 2 or 3 single biggest things you possibly could do to help bring Detroit back.
And in Detroit, it's linking the hospital sort of center, the arts center, and the downtown commercial center.
That's right. It's a 3.5 mile stretch. Now, I was talking to somebody the other day. He said, "Dan, you're severely underselling this thing. Does the train go both ways?" I said, "Yes." He said, "You better say it's 7 miles, not 3.5." So I guess it's 7 miles.
You call this the Big Bang approach. Mm-hmm. This, again, focusing on the downtown area, investing a lot. What are some of the other initiatives that are part of the Big Bang?
Well, first, just defining Big Bang for a second. So, we would talk to, and we are talking to tons of retailers as we try to bring in destination retail into the city that you can't get in the suburbs. So, big, sort of cool stores that people would have to come into the city for. We're talking to them, they go, "Look, we'd love to come. We want to be there. We need more nighttime residents. We need people to live there." Then we talk to all the people. We love to live in Detroit. We want to live there. It'd be the first thing I'd like to do, except I've got nowhere to shop. So you're in this catch-22 thing here. So our only solution to this was, look, we got to do this like a Big Bang. And I don't mean 1/1,000,000th of a second or whatever the Big Bang was. I'm talking about like over a 2-3 year period. So we went out on the buying spree and bought a couple million square feet of office space that you're looking at here, and also secured a bunch of retail along this Woodward Avenue corridor, and through master leases and acquisition. And what we're trying to do is really master plan the whole thing at once, bring in other developers for residential retail. Most of the office that we've acquired, believe it or not, is almost full. But others are coming down. So, Big Bang, do it together, then you've got a big shot at sort of solving this catch-22 problem.
Now, it's set up on the screen, no ruin porn, but a lot of people wonder about the sort of abandoned communities or zones of Detroit where the lights have just been switched off. And you've also been looking at those communities and those people as well.
Yeah, so we use this term in Detroit. We call it, people come from all over the world to take pictures of, the ruins, as they say. So we call it ruin porn. Like, it's pretty obscene. But the ones that come to do that are obviously specifically targeting, the top or the worst 5 or 10 buildings that you could possibly fathom, and saying that's all of Detroit, which clearly isn't the case. So, our people, I have to tell you, I can't, maybe this sounds crazy with 6,500 people, and maybe I'm sheltered or something, but I can't find a single person that has come up and said, we're upset that we moved downtown. And not only that, they're engaged, they feel great about working there's some energy in an urban city that you just don't get in the suburbs, and now they're involved, as you were talking about earlier, with the community. I mean, they're involved in so many community things into the neighborhoods, in education, and everybody's taking on their own, and we'll support them and match their contributions. But it's more than money, it's their involvement. And having those kinds of numbers involved can have some significant impact in a short period of time.
There are cities that like to use sports teams or bringing in stadiums as a way to revitalize themselves, brand their identity, but you're already saturated with that. Now, you as owners have done a lot, such as the M1 Rail, but what could one expect the sports teams as franchises to be doing to contribute to Detroit?
We could expect the Tigers to win the next 2 games to go into the World Series. Number 1. But so you have two newer stadiums down there. You have Comerica Park, which is about 10 years old, beautiful ballpark where the Tigers play. Right next door, Ford Field, also about 9 or 10 years old, where the Lions play. And then you have The Red Wings that play on the river that are contemplating a brand new stadium also right there, not too far from this building here, which we're in. And CompuWare, which is another technology company. Peter Carmanis at CompuWare moved down first, built that building in 2003 when there was sort of nothing there. The Pistons do not play in Detroit. In fact, only 2 teams in the entire NBA do not play in an urban core, and that's Sacramento and Detroit. We're trying to, persuade them to come down there too. But certainly, sports, especially in a town like Detroit, a Midwest town, is a big, big thing, a big, big deal to people. They live and die by it. Same thing with Cleveland. So, they bring millions of people into the city. And our thing is we want them not to just come to the city, but come to the city and stay and go out and entertain themselves and live there, of course.
Well, in the spirit of the previous session as well, where you're in front of such a high-powered audience, what would be your appeal to everyone here?
Well, come to Detroit. That's number one. And first of all, we'll show you around. You can get in if you're looking for a cost type of situation. The costs are lower than any urban core you're going to be in. The Midwest work ethic is a true thing. I know that people talk about it, it's sort of cliche or whatever, but it is absolutely a true thing, and we know this from our experience. We do have 500 people here in Scottsdale. Actually, they work very, very hard. A lot of them are from the Midwest, but I'm going to get myself in big trouble here. Our people, are hardworking. I mean, the people in Detroit, they want to work, they want jobs, and they will work their tail off. And the costs are cheap. And there's a very huge brain situation, if you will, brain economy going on, and great people coming out of the great university, Michigan State, Ann Arbor, where Google has an office, is also a thriving tech corridor.
You mentioned me some of the brilliant Detroit natives who have become sort of part of the diaspora and on the West Coast. To remind everyone who some of the minds are.
This is a thing we talk about a lot. We say we can't have the next one leave. I mean, the reason, we call it doing well by doing good, or doing well by doing good, right? There's no conflict in that, and if we can create this thriving, exciting urban core, we won't lose, like Groupon, for instance. 2 of the 3 guys that started Groupon and went to Chicago are from Detroit. I mentioned earlier Larry Page, I believe, is from Lansing or East Lansing. Steve Ballmer's from Detroit. The guy that runs Sun Microsystems or started is from Detroit. And you go on and on and on. Half of the Hollywood producers are from Detroit. The guys you work with. It's got a huge, not only great work ethic, but a great intellectual talent as well, and the costs are cheap, and people want bring in the big names or even startups that don't have the names yet. The red carpet will be rolled out by myself and others, and I think you'd be very, very happy to place some kind of activity in the city. And then you have we have City Loft, which is a retail effort through a big regional mall developer in the suburbs that's putting in pop-up stores, and there's just all kinds of activity going on.
Fantastic. Dan, you're a real role model, really, for all of us who are looking at revitalizing American cities. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.